Poetry has undergone many changes in style, topic, and structure. This introduction will shed light on the major poetic periods throughout history. The first poetic period is ancient poetry. Concentrated in Greece, many poets wrote long verses about heroic figures. This genre is called epic poems. These poems seem more like novel in length and contain details vital to preserving the events of a hero's life. They include the Epic of Gilgamesh, Iliad and the Odyssey, and Beowulf. This era lasted for 3,000 years before a new era of poetry appeared. A new era blossomed in southern France and is known as the Provençal era or the Occitane era. This era focuses on lyrical rhythm and most topics centered around secret love, passion, and imagery. This era is most known for the mode these poems were performed. The term troubadour is the name of the poets of this era. Troubadours would travel and perform poems aloud rather than writing and sending them through the country. During the Episcopal Inquisition of the 12th century, many troubadours fled to Spain and Italy. This mood transformed troubadour poetry into a new era. In Italy, Frederick II patronized a new poetic period called the Sicilian era. He emphasized the subject of courtly love, and most poets of this time started to create rigid structure for poems such as sonnet structure. Poets of the next era elaborated on these structures and deemed the Sicilian era a transitory one. The Elizabethan era, or the Shakespearean era, became popular towards the end of the Renaissance. This style resurfaced narrative poetry such as the style of epic poems. However, these stories also included poetic structure found in Sicilia-era poetry. Three sonnet structures were developed during this time: Shakespearean, Petrarchan, and Spenserian. These are the popular styles of sonnets studied in schools today. Freedom of subject inspired many diverse sonnets in this era. A new era transformed out of the Elizabethan Shakespearean era due to a change in tone and subject. The Romantic era focused on nature, philosophy, and love. Poets of this time, such as Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, and John Keats, entailed personal passion and emotion in their poetry. This period revolved around personal experiences of the poet and how they perceived the events that became the topic of their poetry. Destructure of poetry started at this time and made way for free verse that would define a new era. American Transcendentalism started in the 1830s with Ralph Waldo Emerson. This era was inspired by a motto of, "A nation of men will for the first time exist because each believes himself inspired by the divine soul which also inspires all men." Topics of poetry in this era are extremely heart-centered and personal. A goal of this era was to socialize and spread personal awareness. This free and personal mindset, with inspiration from the Romantic destructurization of poetry, transformed into a new era. The mid-1900s proved its own period that is still popular. The B era is inspired by travel, expression, and disenfranchisement. Poets focus on the individuality of life and the existence of subculture. Free verse is instilled into this era for dramatic uses such as pauses in performed poetry and style in written poetry. These main eras form our history of poetry, and each form inspires the next. To know how these eras intertwine is key to understanding how each era became part of history.